by Mr. Middleton from the Presidio Trust. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Craig Middleton, Executive Director of the Presidio Trust. Thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this hearing today. And thank you, Supervisor McGoldrick, for pointing out the historic importance of Mountain Lake. It really is an important piece to the whole history of California, the western United States, and San Francisco, of course. Interestingly enough, Mountain Lake was so important to the history of the Presidio and to the city because it had fresh water that was drinking water. And that's where the De Anza expedition camped. That's where they stopped for refreshment, for pure, good drinking water, and then went on to discover the bay and found the fort that became the Presidio. So it's a very important resource, not only currently, but also in our history. Doug Kern pointed out something that I wanted to reinforce, which is that there is interest, should be interest from both the city and the Presidio Trust in fixing the problems here, because there is a jurisdictional line that splits the lake. Actually, it's about, I think, 75% on the Presidio Trust side and the other 25% on the city side, but nonetheless, it's an important issue for both of us to solve. And I really appreciate your putting a spotlight on this issue, helping us kind of get to the table and build a consensus for a solution. I should point out also that the sediments at this point do not cause a human health problem. This is not a situation of a dire situation at the moment. It's something we should clean up. It's got ecological implications, and as you say, some implication to animals and people who might get into the sediment and stir it up a little bit. I wanted to also acknowledge the work of the community volunteers. This has been an incredible project. Despite the problems that we're facing now in terms of finding the money to do the cleanup and also to stop the runoff off of Highway 1, there has been a tremendous amount of ecological restoration in the area. The Trust has spent about $1 million on both ecological restoration and on studies to try to characterize what the problem really is in the lake. And the volunteer community has really stepped up on this one. The Friends of Mountain Lake Park are particularly active and to be commended, as are the members of the RAB, Restoration Advisory Board. I'm very pleased to hear that Caltrans is willing to sit down with all of us and try to solve this problem. We believe that there are two issues. They have been mentioned. I'll mention them again. One is we've got to stop the drainage into the lake. That's just, let's not make the problem any worse. That's about a $2.5 to $3 million problem. You asked about Lobos Creek. There is no direct connection to Lobos Creek from Mountain Lake, although there is an overflow pipe that needs to be taken care of that could ultimately bring waters from Mountain Lake into Lobos Creek. That currently isn't happening. Overflow, right. So within the $2.5 to $3 million, we think that those two, the drainage problem and the overflow problem, could be solved. The sediment problem is more expensive. It's about $8 million. And as Doug Kern mentioned, when the Army left in 1999, or when they handed over the environmental program to the Presidio Trust to handle, they declared the lake clean. So they didn't include any funding for the cleanup of Mountain Lake in the money that they transferred to the Presidio Trust. So that's money that we need to find. We're going talking to the Army. We're talking to Caltrans. We've tried to think a little bit outside the box and figure out ways to get funding from various sources, including Caltrans, through grant processes and other less direct means that would not set precedents for any agency, but would get us the funding and get us a closure on the problem. I think that's the key here, and I really appreciate your willingness to convene a meeting. I think that we need to be thinking outside the box on this one. We need to be creative. We need to look towards solutions in our conversations and not get hung up on all the normal back and forth that agencies typically engage in. I think there is a solution within reach here. We just need to sharpen our pencils and figure out how to get there. So thank you.
You said that it was declared clean in 1994?
1999.
1999. And so it's almost 10 years or so. So do you think that then it's gotten that bad over these 10 years, or could there
No,
have been
we
a
actually
possibility?
do think it has not gotten any worse necessarily. It's really lead pollution from runoff off the roadway when there was lead in the gasoline.
Okay.
There's some pesticides we think in there, possibly, as someone mentioned earlier, from the golf course. Should say that the golf course today is a
Right.
green golf course. The trust is winning awards for its green management of that golf course. So we think the problem is really a problem that happened probably before 1999.
Before 1999? Okay, thank you.
You know, though,
Just to
going
be
back
clear-
on,
go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, on what Supervisor Maxwell was saying, it took a couple of kids from Berkeley to figure out that there were sediment problems. I mean, what kind of tests were run, by the Army before they gave it over to the Presidio? It doesn't sound like they looked that hard.
Well, it's interesting. I can't really, I'm not an expert on this, so it would be hard for me to characterize exactly what the tests are. But we, as you say, have found since that there is significant lead in the lake, in the sediments of the lake.
I think you had mentioned it earlier that if you probably took a water sample, you probably wouldn't find that much. It's when you actually dig up the land underneath that you start, where you have the toxicity. It's actually the same out by the, marina. One of our yacht harbors has a lot of toxic elements in the sand itself, and so it's making it impossible or very difficult for us to fix Fort Mason because we can't dig or rebuild those piers because we can't dig into the sand. I'm just curious. I mean, what did they do? It doesn't sound like they tried that hard.
Well, I'll submit for your records the information that we got, and we have done quite a bit of study afterwards, not just at Mountain Lake but throughout the Presidio, and have found some interesting discrepancies between data.
Did they look at did they dig down into the soil?
I think there has been some coring done. I'm not sure when it was, whether it was before 1999 or afterward. I know we've done some. One of the issues, of course, is that the sediment is there's getting to be more and more sediment. It's called eutrophication. The lake is turning into a meadow.
Right.
And I think we all like Mountain Lake to be Mountain Lake, not Mountain Meadow. So we do need to dredge for that purpose as well. And that's when you get into the whole discussion of what's in the soils that you're dredging.
But isn't that kind of what lakes do? I mean, that's kind of a natural thing, even Lake Tahoe. I mean, there's a whole way that they become, that happens. So isn't that a part of the natural progression of things?
I suppose in many cases it is. In this case, part of the problem is the lake was much larger. And as a much larger lake, it would not have eutrophied quite so fast, if that's the correct term. But it was filled in partially to build the road.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So I'd like
Madam Chair, can I just, by the way, congratulate Mr. Middleton on a wonderful solution regarding the hospital at 14th and Lake. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to come before any of the bodies here. It's a different topic, but a great job there in terms of working with the community. So we have a lot of trust in you. Thank you. I don't mean to overuse the word trust because you got the Presidio to trust, but terrific. Thank you. Excuse me.